not only showed was there no such thing as Roman and Greek culture, because Rome and Greece were a product of Africans by the name of Phoenicians. Hannibal's father, Hannibal's grandfather, and Hannibal's great-grandfather were the ones who left a portion of North Africa, went into Rome and Europe, and built the civilization you know as Greece and Rome. A white author years ago wrote a book called Black Athena to validate this. As a matter of fact, he was coming to Detroit to do a lecture, and a bunch of white folks sending messages. If you come here, you're going back in the box. Plain and simple. We don't want you messing with our establishment. Because it is very important to those folks that the information that is exposed to us is only the information that is produced by them. Because information creates your reference point, creates your frame of mind, creates your belief, and creates your reality. Whatever the information may be it right or wrong, it does create your reality. And when you understand what's at risk, when you're bringing the truth, and the truth has the ability to eradicate their lie is our reality. So they've taken out and done harm and executed a lot of people who have made attempts to eradicate the lie. George G.M. James is one of those brothers. That book he produced called Stolen Legacy cost him his life. And most of us ain't never heard of George G.M. James. But if I would suggest, if you never read the book, go get the book. We've had kids all over Michigan universities who have come into lectures in Detroit, read the book, gone back to school, and argued with their Greek philosophy teachers and Roman history teachers, and they pulled the kids aside and told them, look, if you disappear for the rest of the semester, you get an automatic B+. That's all they told them. Do not come back to my class for the rest of the semester, and you will get an automatic B+. Because if you keep coming in here with this information, you're going to have problems. And that's how they eradicated the problem. Because they're not going to let you. Believe me, I've been invited to some universities in Detroit to do this particular lecture and never got another invite. They don't like you messing with the status quo. Information is power, and it is powerful. We only look at it as, when we say powerful, as the ability that one obtains from proper information. But it's also power in the extent that it has the ability to control the minds of the masses. And if you want to control the world, all you have to do is get in a position to educate the world. That's all it takes. Be responsible for that which they are taught, and the job is done. And ain't pretty much no place you can go on the planet where the books that you read that are educating you are not produced, written, and authored by the people who are presently in control of the world today. That's the very reason why. This presentation, again, is Black America BC to AD, America Land of the Moors. I begin this presentation with the only right way to begin it, with an image of the noble one, the one we call Noble Drew Ali, the prophet that was sent to us back in the day to help resurrect humanity from the dead. And I like this image for another particular reason, is because he shows you who he considers humanity to be. He's holding in his arms a woman. If y'all can see the image. Noble Drew Ali, the prophet who came to resurrect the dead. He's holding a woman. What's the symbolism behind that image? That is civilization. The black woman is the mother of humanity. And if you're going to resurrect the civilization, you have to start at the beginning. Because that's where it begins and that's where it ends. We didn't get into this state as a result of them just grabbing up the babies and changing the mindsets of the men. You have to start at the root. Because once you change her mind, guess what? All the minds that she produced out the womb, guess what? What are they going to be taught?
Like her.
Exactly. That's why I say that's where it begins and it ends, right there. There's a saying, I don't know who's responsible for the quote, but they said no nation can rise as high as the woman. Because that's the teaching. It begins and it ends right there. And when he came, he left a legacy of information, and somehow a lot of it got distorted. And it wasn't an accident. There was a lot of so-called Moors who had infiltrated the brothers' organization, and they were simply crones and spies of the said government to help undermine and misdirect. But no matter what they have done, this process is, what he laid down is almost 80 years old, and it ain't dead yet. As a matter of fact, it's a whole new beginning. There's a fire blazing across this country, North, South, and Central America, about the information that he's brought. People are waking up in Mexico, Honduras, talking about Noble Drew Ali and this being the land of the Moors. I know personally, I've met some brothers from South America who said they know ifs, ands, and buts about who and what they are. They know that they are Moors. Yet we seem to have missed the boat somehow. And this presentation has been an effort of mine to culminate enough information so that when y'all left out of here, you had no doubts, no qualms about your status in this society and who this property you call North America belonged to. So let's get into it. We're gonna take an intermission about an hour and a half from now because it's quite a bit of information. Let you take a break, maybe get some water, do some deep breathing, and get it going again.
Could you explain the history of yourself for a minute, please?
The history of myself?
That some people do not know.
All right.
Like me.
a little history about Brother Omari. Born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. My first exposure to the Moors and Noble Drew Ali began when I was about 13, 14. I actually started attending one of the temples in Detroit when I was 15, and I ran with a bunch of so-called Moorish brothers, my oldest brother is one, and I got a little frustrated with, those so-called Moors because we always talk about nobility. We always were talking about, this being our land and we being this great people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But my issue was with the brothers who I was following behind and mimicking is that they were always falling short. And we're going to have to truly come to understand what it means when we talk about a noble Moor, because some of us are so off point when we understand that term nobility. Nobility ain't just a term, it was a way of life for us as a people, and we taught the rest of the word nobility. But these brothers begin to fall short, so I kind of strayed off and got caught up into some other things and went through my gamut of evolution and my experience, those things that I had to go through to get to this point. I graduated from high school in Detroit, went to Lincoln University on a football scholarship for a year and a half. Came back home, had to go to work, had to find a job because mom was about to lose the crib and all that good stuff. So began to self-educate myself because after I came home from Lincoln, I realized that I hadn't been taught exactly nothing as it relates to who and what I am as a so-called black man in America. Got caught up into the history again. Fortunately, I met a group of brothers in Detroit in 1989. They were members of the Craft of Amin Ra, which is an organization of Dr. Ben Yakinen. He's one of our most premier black Egyptologists who've been taking people back and forth from the United States to Egypt since about the 50s, late 40s, mid 50s. He's an awesome brother. I've traveled with him for about the last 12, 13 years. Egypt, Ethiopia, Sudan. I lived in West Africa for 2.5 years, traveled to about 11 countries in West Africa, 4 or 5 countries on the East Coast. I've been to the Louvre, I've been to the British Museum, just trying to get my hands on some of the evidence, some of the validation to prove, because, that's the key. And we don't understand. I remember Doc saying about 13 years ago that white folks spend more money in a day than all of black America spend in a year as it relates to information and knowledge. And when I got my first trip to Egypt, those words came true. Because I saw a sea of Europeans from just about every European country that is on the map. And as I looked around, I kept looking for my folks. And at that time, I think it was about 32 of us there. We were like a speck when all the other groups were in the same area at the Cairo Museum. When you came outside, it would look like you were being attacked because it was just a dot of us and an ocean of Europeans and Asians. And it was so amazing because all these people were claiming these images on these walls. They were claiming these pyramids and these ancient temples. And I'm saying, wait a minute, but the faces in the tombs look like me. They got dreadlocks. They got thick lips and wide noses like me. They got dog melon like me. But all these Eurocentric folks were saying these were their ancestors. And I'm like, wow. You talking about, what do you call it, a paradigm shift? That was it. That changed my life forever. Brothers say, once you stand at the foot of the pyramid, your life will be changed forever. And it wasn't at the pyramid, it was at the museum, because I saw how all these other ethnic groups was claiming what is known to be the greatest culture in history in the world today. And everybody was there to claim it but us. And we're the only ones who have rightful claim to it. And I said, he's right. These people, because every time you see a production of an Egyptian movie, you see Charles and Heston, you see, what is her name, Elizabeth Taylor. You see everybody, anybody, but black folks. But the murals that are 5,000, 6,000 years old, you see them people in their complexion and their full regalia, the whole nine. And you don't see them looking like a European nowhere. Information is powerful, be it correct or incorrect, because you can use incorrect information to put yourself in power. And that's what these folks have done. They have created a reality for us that is based on everything but the truth. And that's been my mission, to get my hands on, uncover the truth, and do whatever I could to expose that truth to my folks. And this is a result of why I'm here today. I've taken an oath, my Creator, to do my part, just like he did his part, Garvey did his part, Malcolm did his part. I mean, it becomes what you call a love, because when you understand who and what you are, you can't have nothing but love. Because that's all could motivate you to do this type of work.
Right.
Think about it. With all that he did, he didn't leave here wealthy and rich, but he left a legacy that would never, ever disappear. They thought they did that 60, 70 years ago. It ain't going nowhere. It's only gotten stronger. And it's going to continue to get stronger, because that's how the truth is. It don't matter how you bury it, how deep a hole you put it down, how much you crush it and stomp it down. It still rises. It still comes out. And even if they burn all the books, it's still coming out, because it's in your blood. It's in your DNA. And he didn't have to go to Egypt and nowhere else to get this information. And you'll be surprised. Let's get it going. Go and roll into the next slide. Can we darken that light a little bit more? Turn the other way. As Drew said, that it was time to break the chains of slavery. The chains of slavery that we're attempting to break ain't necessarily physical ones. These are the chains of slavery. As I stated earlier, only thing you need to do to take control of the world is to control the information that the world is being taught. Because our reality is based off our perception. Our perception is based off the information that we have been given. And that's all this thing is about. When you go back and look at Matrix again, this is what the war was about. The controlling of the minds. They had planted all this information into these folks' mindset. Remember when they found Neo in an incubator. And Neo believed that he was what? A computer analyst, that he was a computer hacker on the side, that he ate noodles at this favorite restaurant, and none of that shit really happened. It was an illusion. It was an illusion. And 99.9% of everything that we have been taught has been taught to us to create the exact same thing, an illusion. That someone is in power, someone has control over us, and we are powerless. That is the greatest illusion you're going to come to the realization of. That you don't have no power, because this whole thing is being held and made to happen as a result of the power that you have. What did Morpheus tell Neo he represented? What did he hold up and show him? A battery. A source of what? Power. And that battery was the source of power that ran what? The machine. We are the battery, the power source that's running the machine today. This whole thing you call American society is a machine that's powered by your energy and your effort. Go and look at the metaphysical concepts of what you call a church. The biggest power generators on the planet. And because the mindset that you have, when you in there and you're being hyped up, it's like they're just running the generator. And all this energy is being created. And it goes somewhere. And it does something. The energy goes out and permeates the globe to maintain the system of white power. Y'all better understand what this is being used to create. This is being used to create your reality. All they got to do is give you the necessary imagery. Once they plant the information in here, what's in here is going to manifest right back out. And we walk up into those facilities, those transmission centers, and they get us hyped up. And we roll up. Why do you think they got the antennas on top of the building? So that the energy, as it's transmitted, it's going out a perfect line to do what it's being sent to do. You can actually train the people to maintain their own system of slavery. Because all you have to do is control this. And this is what he said. We must liberate. And only we can. One of my favorite songs by the other prophet named Bob Marley. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our minds. Can't nobody fix it but us. Can't nobody fix it but us. This is totally up to us. And all we have to do is to break that chain, is put proper information back into there. And that band gonna snap. When you put the necessary information back inside of there, this band gonna snap. It's over with. And this is all we fighting for. This is what all these brothers that lost their life because all they did was bring you the truth. Marcus brought the truth. Garvey brought the truth. When King got exposed to the truth, they hadn't let him go. See, they utilized him as long as he stayed with the program. But the minute he started dealing with the truth, they put him to sleep. If you look at the last portion of his life, he was in 100% agreement with who?
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X. That's why they kept him and Malcolm from meeting. Every time they agreed to have a meeting, white folks stepped in and said, well, Martin, not right now. It wouldn't be good. It would scare the other folks. You know, everybody's scared of him and yada, yada, yada. And he went along to get along. And then when he stopped going along to get along, he was gotten rid of. Y'all don't understand how powerful the truth is. And to the extent they're willing to go to make sure you don't get the truth. Because when you get the truth, guess what they get? Exposed. They also get weaker. Why do you think they were after them? All I'm doing is trying to give you a re-analogy of the matrix. That's all this lecture is. We're dealing with the matrix. Because every time they exposed a person to the truth, the person was what? Unplugged from the matrix. And that person was a threat to what? To the machine, to the existence of the machine. So they were constantly going after everybody who was unplugged to either replug them or annihilate them. Because the truth is dangerous. It ain't just powerful. It's dangerous when you understand how and what is the system of power and control. All it is information being placed here. This is what, all you got to do is put the proper information here and your job is done. It's done. Go ahead. Yeah, it's all, they're already facing that way, so when you take them out, just go ahead. Go ahead. They ain't facing that way. You can turn them around. This was piece called Archaeological Cover-Up. Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the future? Who controls the present controls the past. George Orwell's 1984. This was a piece done by David Hatcher Childers. This white boy got about a dozen books out on ancient civilizations around the world. And this particular piece was dealing with the United States and all the information that's been hidden and destroyed. The Smithsonian Institute has personally taken 2 barges into the Atlantic Ocean and dumped them. What was on these barges? African artifacts, as most people call them. Artifacts that have been dug up out of the mounds throughout the United States. Markings, such as black granite stones that sat along the coastal areas, with Latin script, with Arabic script, letting you know when you came into this port where you were and who was running things. There was no mistakes about it. And he talks about it right here. When Thomas came to the Bureau of Ethnology, he was a pronounced believer in existence of a race of mound builders distinct from the American Indians. However, John Wesley Powell, the director of the Bureau of Ethnology, a very sympathetic man toward the American Indians, have lived peaceful with peaceful Winnebago Indians of Wisconsin for many years as a youth, and felt that American Indians were unfairly thought of as primitive and savage. When you get down here, it goes into further detail about the artifacts and the images that were dug from the mounds in different areas throughout America. They've even blown up sections, put craters in certain areas out west in Arizona and other places so that you cannot get to these ancient areas, because when you go and see these ancient areas, a lot of the buildings and structures look a lot like what was going on in Kemet. Down in the Grand Canyon, the reason that they put the Hoover Dam there is because they had almost 4 miles of temple structure that is identical to the temple of Hatshepsut in Kemet. 4 miles of temple structure. We're talking about the pillars, the same imagery. 4 miles long, and they stopped letting people go down there in the early 1900s as they began the development of the Hoover Dam. And once they got that dam built, they redirected the water, and there's about 40 to 50 feet of water that runs through there now that covers up all these artifacts, identical to what they did over in Kemet. They built the Aswad Dam to bury the southern Kemetic culture, to show that Egypt's culture did not start up north and work its way south, but came from the south and went north. So they built the Aswad Dam, and they put all those ancient artifacts underwater. They took 2 barges, more than 4 tons of artifacts, and dumped them in the Atlantic Ocean because they ran out of places to hide this information. We got a lot of caves that were government facilities that are being used by Smithsonian Institute today, which is housing a lot of these artifacts. Just like they hid those in Kemet, in the British Museum and other places, they've hidden all of yours over here. Next page. And you can actually look that up on the internet. They still have the information available about that archaeological cover-up. Y'all know I had to put my 2 cents in up here. Lord, when will the sleeping giant awake, or will he ever? This is one of the first heads they found, the Olmec images that was found down south in Mexico, buried beneath years and years of soil, debris, etc., etc. They sat on top of this information almost 40 years before the general public ever got exposed to it. 40 years. And as the brother said, if the head is 8 to 10 feet tall, imagine how big the body was. Because the head is 8 to, some of them range from 8 feet to 15 feet. And there was a body connected to the head somewhere down in that, so I guess they just left it right there. Bring that, slide that up a little bit so I can catch the bottom of it the other way. A little more. 1 Corinthians 3:16. Know ye not that you are the temple of God, and that the Spirit of the God dwelleth in you. Psalms 82:6. I have said that ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. John 10:34. Is it not written in your law that I said that ye are gods? There's a book dealing with the Olmec culture, and there are quotes almost identical to these biblical quotes that was found down there in some of those tombs in Mexico. I think it's Chichen Itza. I believe that's how it's pronounced.
Chichen Itza, something like
Chichen
that.
Itza, yeah. I've made it down there one time, and I haven't had an opportunity to get back down there. But you know what? I made a statement to Dr. Ben years ago, and I kind of pissed him off. I said, Doc, why do we spend thousands of dollars traveling to Egypt looking at all the pyramids there when we have almost 5,000 pyramids in our backyard here? When are we going to start dealing with the pyramids here? And he said, whenever you decide. Whenever you decide. And I'm like, no problem. No problem. So I have made the decision to deal with the pyramids we have right here. Y'all need to go over to St. Louis, Illinois and check out that pyramid, because that's, go ahead, next one. That's where they took a lot of artifacts out of. A lot of artifacts. Right there over there in St. Louis, Illinois. These are most of the heads that were dug up down there in South America. And it's interesting, over the years, there have been a lot of debates. When I was in New York a lot, because I was traveling with Doc and Brother John Henry and all, because that's where most of our scholars were. They were often sending out invitations to the Jews and other European scholars to debate these images, because white folks was everywhere talking about, oh, these were not, they had Negroid features, but they were not Negro. And that used to amaze me. You know, these people have a way of creating their own reality because it suits their purpose. But they would say that these are not, they had Negroid features, but they were not Negro. And so this particular scholar went to stating that, well, the reason why the lips were thick and the nose were thick is because of the crude tools that we use to carve these images. So we couldn't make the lips and the nose fine because the tools were not advanced enough so we could make these things happen. Slide it down a little bit. And one of Doc's partners, I wish I could remember his name, but he asked a question. He said, if the tools were so crude that they could not make these lips fine, how is it possible to outline the lips, and then how is it possible to make the eyelids when you see, you know, the tools, they were too crude to make a fine marking, but yet they got eyelids on these stone images, and the lips are even having outlining. But these were not Negro, they just had Negroid features as a result of the tools. This is how they explain you away. They take you out of history with a simple explanation that don't make no sense whatsoever. But that's how they do it. They have to do it because they can't recognize you. They can't say you were here before them because it messes up everything. It messes up years and years and centuries of lives. Hundreds and thousands of books that would have to be rewritten. But not only that, there was a debate back in '87 in in New York and in Texas. Texas is where all the books for the public schools are produced. The history books in America was the debate, and they say that the history books in America's public school system have more than 1,700 mistakes. 1,700 mistakes. We call them lies. And she said, we know that the books are incorrect. Now, here's what the Jew lady said. A little Jewish woman in Texas over the facility that produces all the books that our children learn in the public school. She said, yes, they are incorrect. Yes, there are lots of mistakes. But for us to tell the truth would be to undermine society as we know it. Mm-hmm. Now, what was she saying? This was an article in the newspaper in Detroit. I had it for a long while. It was part of my lecture, Psychological Destruction of Black Civilization. But this was in a news article. She said for us to tell the truth would be to undermine our society as we know it. Telling the truth could bring an end to American culture, could bring an end to the American so-called power system as you know it. Because telling the truth would do what? It would change our minds. It would change our minds. And by changing our minds, it would change our reality. We would see that these cats are absolutely nothing. We have been given an illusion that is creating a reality that is based on all lies and misinformation. And that's the first time they told the truth. That was the first time they told you the truth. We can't afford to tell you the truth because it would change the power structure. Teaching you who you are and telling you the truth about yourself would change the power structure. Would make us the slave, is what the woman said. And we ain't about to let that happen. So y'all can protest and march all you want. We ain't finna change the damn books. Now that right there should have told us that we need to educate ourselves so that we can educate our babies. But it was just water under the bridge, as they say. This is the major area where this so-called civilization began. And you know, a lot of our folks get pissed off at me when I say that Africa ain't necessarily the cradle of civilization. When you get into the history of Leakey, who was over there in the gorge, in Oduwa Gorge in Ethiopia, and he found the bones of Lucy, Aminda Lucy, and said, well, this is the origin of civilization, this is where man first come from, etc., etc., etc. It ain't necessarily so. Because thousands of Lucys were found right over here. They found all up in this area and all throughout North and South America. They've even got markings and information showing that at one time you were over here domesticating dinosaurs.
Yeah, the footprints in Texas. Yeah.
Say that again?
The footprints in Texas show a man and a dinosaur walking stride for stride.
You were domesticating dinosaurs. That's how far back your history goes. When the truth is told, this hemisphere here is part of Atlantis. If you get in some of these maps, some of these brothers have done about Atlantis, they show Atlantis as part of the Caribbean that disappeared. One of the so-called greatest sleeping prophets known in the history of America is a dude by the name of Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce said that Atlanta is in this hemisphere, and that by 2012, between 2012 and 2015, there's a volcano that's erupting up under Atlantis, and that in another few years, the volcano is going to cause Atlantis to resurface. And they are doing all kind of excavation right over here in this area. They say there's supposed to be a 4 miles of pyramid structure, and one of them supposed to have a crystal capstone of some kind. That's supposed to be linked up with the so-called what is that Bermuda Triangle, where all these crazy things that happen, boats and ships and planes, been disappearing for the last 70 years. A lot of energy over here in this area. And this little spot right here where I'm planning to relocate, this spot used to be a major shipping port. Right here. And you know what they were shipping? You call them Europeans today.
Yeah.
You call them Europeans today. I remember when I was 15 when I read The Making of the White Man by Elijah Muhammad, and I said that he was a kook. He was really dumb. But then when I got to Kemet, and I visited four of the tombs, and they had the story of the Tamahu. This story was in part of Sheikh Anta Diop's book that they told him before it could be published that the story had to come out. The story was about the creation of the white man, the Tamahu. That's what the Tamahu means, created pale one, not white one. He got that about 1868. We'll get into that. But a lot of the history have shown that this is the area that they were first left here to go to Africa and to go to so-called Europe. They're not indigenous to Europe. And if you know anything about Hitler's background or his history and his memoirs, when he left Germany, he said that he was going home. And half of his entourage was with him. And when the Jews sent these cats out to find all of these Germans who had ran around the world to hide. Where did they find them at? Argentina, Chile, all throughout South America, all down in here. One of them had ran for office and became a governor in Chile. And that's how he got busted. If Germany ain't his home, where the hell was he from when he said he was going off? And I got inquisitive, and lo and behold, when you throw it out in the universe, it comes back to you. All you got to do is ask for it. This is where he came from. And where has 75% of the wealthy and elite of America gone today?
South.
Most of them right here. Your corporations, the bank accounts of the wealthy and elite in America, half of them are right here in Belize. A partner of mine down there telling me that he's got over $3 billion of white money in his neighborhood now. $3 million. That's the wealth of those white folks around him. He's from Belize. He's been living in Detroit since he was a kid. He went back and started building his house because his folks got land there. And he's got Steven Spielberg. Bill Gates got a big old villa up the street from him. A whole bunch of folks. He said that he got $1 billion in his neighborhood, over billions of dollars in his neighborhood right now. Because they all running up out of here. And we, Whistling Dixie, ain't got a clue. Slide it down. Attention Americans. This is the root of your history. It is the cradle and it is the altar. Listen to the most silent voice of the most ancient culture in Mexico, the mother of civilization of our continent, the Olmec. Converted rain into harvest, sun into calendar, stone into sculpture, cotton into cloth, pilgrimage into commerce, mountains into thrones, and jaguars into religion, and men into gods. This is the first people in America. Yet we're told that we got here as a result of the Middle Passage, that they've been bringing us thousands and millions of Africans over here in a 200 year time period, basically. At a time when the largest ship could only carry 50 people, passenger and crew included. How was that possible? 50 people. The largest ship could only carry 50. Crew and passenger included. This is stolen legacy too, y'all. Because we don't have a clue about who we are in this society, yet we call ourselves educated people. We got all kind of degrees. Yes, sir.
That being said, the passage of the vote, how long did it take to get the vote out? 6 months?
It took, for them, it took 6 months. But before then, when we were trading and traveling back and forth, we could get here. We could get here in 3 because we knew how to navigate. We didn't need oars. All we did was follow the current. We traveled seasonally. You got a current coming off the west coast of Africa that will take your sail and bring you all the way here. And you got a current, a wind current, coming off the west coast of the United States that'll sail you right back without an oar. They didn't catch on to that till damn near the 1900s. Oh, that's how they did it. Yep, simple. Why wear yourself out with the damn oars? A constant wind gonna run straight from the west coast of Africa to the Caribbean and back. And back. Season is how we did it. Go ahead, next slide. We're gonna speed it up a bit because I got Brother Carl was going at me and said, we got all these images. What is going on? The saying is a picture is worth 1,000 words. A picture is worth 1,000 words. I could talk to you all day, but the images that I'm presenting is what's going to help the concept come through. This is just a little sidereal calendar of evolution. Going back to 1500s, you ain't got nobody in here until you see these so-called Olmecs. And as you migrate on up through here, you begin to get into what you call the Aztec, the Maya, the Inca, the Toltec, etc., etc. But what they have managed to keep out of the history books is how and why did we go from the Olmec concept feature or the Negro feature to what we call today the Indian or Asian features, the high cheekbones and the slanted eyes that most Indian cultures have. We missed the link, and here it is right here. There's an old Indian story, one of the oldest, about these two families or these two nations between South and Central America, and one is the so-called Negro family and the other is the so-called Asiatic family. And they were banned never to meet, never to mix, etc., etc., etc. But one day, the brother and the sister got together because they was in love, and they were from the different tribes. And as a result of that amalgamation between this brother and that Asian woman, you begin to see this culture pop up in the Americas. Because those Japanese that they tell you who built the railroads over on the west coast in California, they did not come here as a result of their being part of the so-called slave trade. They've been here. They got 10,000 years of history on this side of the Atlantic or the Pacific. And there was an amalgamation between those folks and the Olmecs. And out of that amalgamation came what you call today Aztec, Maya, Inca, Toltec, and Native American. That's all it was. I got a cousin who's lived in Japan for more than 30 years now. He's got 4 kids over there, and they all look what you call Indian. Straight black hair, high cheekbones, and almond eyes. And I told him, I said, well, damn, if you take them back down South America, you'd lose them. Because you couldn't tell them if they look just like Indian children. And when they over here, that's what everybody's saying. What tribe y'all from? What are they? Choctaw? Cherokee? And he just shake his head. I said, well, you got to understand. That's what they look like to us here. What we're taught what an Indian is. But all it was an amalgamation of these folks. And to cover up their culture, they tell you that they were brought here from China and Japan to build the railroads in California. Y'all remember some of these Chinese movies you done seen where they on a boat and they being brought here and they're the ones who building all the railroads out west? They were already here. And as a matter of fact, Japan was here. I got some brothers in Detroit, a family out of Mississippi, and I had helped them a few years ago with their, I did a lecture for their family reunion. And we located a couple of very prominent people such as this Native American cowboy named Nat Love. I'm looking at their family tree and I see Nat Love and I'm like, and I look at the time and the date and I went and got my book and I'm, do you know who this is? No. That's one of my great ancestors. I said, you don't know who Nat Love is, man? This is the original cowboy in America. You got to be kidding me. I brought the book, he looked, he said, damn. I said, yeah, you got some serious history. He said, well, dude, help me out with this. Every year we have our family reunion. Everybody's sitting around scratching their head because their great-granddaddy told them that they were not indigenous to Mississippi. They came to Mississippi, before they got to Mississippi, or what you call Mississippi today, they came originally from Japan. And they sitting around, how in the hell we from Japan? If you get back before 1865, Japan was Northern California. If you go back before the Reconstruction period, Japan was Northern California. Southern California was Spain. The Reconstruction period that they tell you was reconstructing the South after slavery, it was the reconstructing the history of the world. They turned the world map upside down and put the names here, over there, and vice versa. It's all coming back out today. Next slide. here's where you see the Mayans digging up some of the Olmec images that they had found because they recognized, and all of them have said, as far back as you go, the Europeans tell the story that these are the people who built the pyramids, these are the first Americans, this is the original American culture, but they don't say that. The Aztec, the Maya, or the Inca says, all this shit was here before we got here. We don't know. It is so old, even our great-grandparents done forgot who was it. But then they say, oh, we found them again. Here they are. Here they are. And they start bringing these images back out. And when the white folks start seeing them, they said, hold on. Hold on. We're going to leave it over here for a while. So this information was sat on for over 45 years before the general public was exposed to these images. And this is all they've been doing. While we've been doing our thing, they've been going around the world, removing all your history, removing all your culture, so they could change your reality. Yes, sir.
I got a picture at home of Europeans and painting inside the temple of Mount Rock, painting all the pictures of European.
Yes, sir. If you want to see the origin of graffiti, go over there and go look at some of these mounds we got around here, because they have come and chiseled from the 1600s. You talking about some old graffiti. They want to put their name on everything, and they want to claim everything. These are the images that you rarely see when they talk about the Aztec, the Maya, the Inca. These, what you call blurple, blue-black images of the brothers down here, just like you got the red-brown brother in Kemet and the blue-black brother in Kemet, well, you had the same images here. But this is the one they always leave out, along with the Olmec. When they're talking about Mesoamerica and the ancient American culture, they always overlook the dark brothers with the kinky hair and with the dreadlocks for some reason. You always see the straight-haired, the lighter skin, the lighter complexion, and the lighter-toned individuals. And that ain't an accident. Go ahead. It ain't an accident. This is all by purpose. It's just like when they show you images in South America. When you see people in Mexico and Argentina, you never see the folks with the 12-inch afros, 6 feet 5, looking like, when you go down there, you would think you was in Africa, because I went to scratching my head. Hold on. Africa on that side, what is all y'all doing down here? But you never see them in the media. When they show you Mexico, 90% of Central and South America look like the people in this room, but you don't get to see it. And then they explain it away. Well, that was a result of the slave trade. Do y'all remember when they dug up, they were building this, going to build this new building in New York, and they dug up all these bones. And the first thing the white folks said was that these were, this was a burial ground of slaves. And black folks never paid. They got mad at me. I went down there and told them, y'all out of y'all damn mind. Why do y'all keep letting white people tell you your history and who you are? They ain't no damn slaves. Them people were there before slavery, what y'all call slavery, existed in America. Them people bones is going back 14th century, 15th, 12th century. Oh, that's our ancient, and that's our slave ancestry. Let's go stop them. They finna put a building over top of our ancestral slaves. And y'all don't get the link. They always attach slave to it. They always attach, every time they dig you up, oh, that dude in the pyramid, oh, he was a slave. That dude in that ancient, oh, he was a slave. Yeah, right. After that amalgamation, our features begin to change. And if you notice these heads, the way these heads are shaped, at a point in history, pharaohs in Egypt begin to shape their heads in these cones. And y'all tell me what pharaoh had his head shaped like that?
Akhenaten, his wife too.
Akhenaten. And it's interesting that Akhenaten, supposedly they say was found over here. Keep coming up. Akhenaten and his relationship to North America. Go figure. The term African American and its closely related predecessors, Afro-Americans, have both been used to refer to the people of Africa and or part of the African ancestry living in the Americas. African ancestry. Y'all got here as slaves from Middle Passage. The whole process is to delink, sever, and separate you from something that was rightfully yours. You've been here for a long time. A lot longer than they care to tell you. Because once you make that connection, and they holler somebody got to go home, you then know who it is. If it ain't you, you're at home. It took me $45,000 in 2.5 years to bring my behind right here and find out that I didn't have no African roots. And yes, in a year and a half, I spent $45,000 traveling. That's how much it meant to me in a year and a half. They say that's unheard of for a black person. White folks do it all day. They got all kinds of foundations. They got all kinds of funds and monies. White boys all over Illinois right now getting $500,000 to go and dig up your stuff and then hide it somewhere. And the man said they spend more money in a day than we do in a whole year. And he was not lying. And I said, well, if that's what it takes, so be it. So be it. Next question. Because we don't understand what information really is and how important it is. Yeah, flip it over. Yeah. I'll turn it right back. There we go. Yeah, we started at the top. Always from the south. And this is the temple where you got the brothers inside painted, just like the tombs in Kemet. Their own viewers showing you who they are and what they look like. And this is the one, when you see it in color, it blows your mind. Because you ain't no mistake. They got their locks, they dark as midnight. You know, some of them are reddish brown. But right here, and it works its way up. Just like here, from the south. This is the area, well, they moved all of these. But in Kemet, in the south, there we go, the Abu symbol of Ramses, his temple and his temples for his wife, they were in the southern part where they built the Aswad Dam. And when they built that dam, it flooded these temples. And I mean, these temples are extremely large. But it flooded halfway up to Ramses' image. That would be we're on the 6th floor, that would be about how deep the water was. So they went, what is that organization? They went and they cut these off of the mountain, and they moved it further north and reconnected. It was a hell of a feat. I mean, it was a hell of a feat. They brought that up, but they wanted to do the exact same thing. Cut the origin off, cut the roots out, sever it from, because it were too black. Wasn't no mistake when you get in the southern part of Kemet and the Sudan, in Merowe. They so black, if the lights go out, you can't see them. And it's a beautiful thing. But that's why they had to flood that area. And they did the exact same thing over here. Because you got 4 miles of temple structure. Let me see the temple that I'm talking about. Where's the temple of Hatshepsut? Hathor, right here. This temple right here. All the exact design, all the way down for about 4 miles. And now it's under the Hoover Dam. And that's the extent that they're willing to go through to hide the truth from you. They spent a whole lot of money. It ain't easy to tell a lie. It ain't easy. You got to write a lot of books, and you got to hide a lot of stuff, and it takes money to do that. Dr. Ben said they will do 12 volumes of books to tell a lie. It only takes one pamphlet to tell the truth. He was right. The culture is identical. But we didn't leave here and come over here. It's not happening. The step pyramids over here are actually older than this here. This is the first pyramid, first step pyramid built by, supposedly by Imhotep. The step pyramids back over here are a lot older. And they're giving you 1,500, just like they tell you the Kemetic culture is only 3,000 years old. That damn thing right there is over 10,000 years old. Pardon my English. When you understand how these temples are built, each temple represents a doggone calendar. Each temple was built according to an astrological clock. The Temple of Dendera bared the original zodiac clock, just like the one we got in South America. The Ram Temple would represent what animal in the zodiac? Aries. And each calendar or each time period represented 2,015 years for a total of what they call the Great Year, 26,000 years. Now they done marked the Great Year, a total of 26,000 years. They got three recordings of what you call the Great Year. But they telling you all this is a result of 3,500 to 4,000 BC. And what's deep is, you got another civilization underneath all of this, just like you do over here. But see, it all depends on who's giving you the information. The information creates the perception, creates the reality. Next image. This is a calendar put together by Barry Fairs out of the book Ancient America BC. And he shows you the relationship, the Egyptian hieroglyphs, Celtic Ogham, Iberian Punic, Libyan, mining, etc. Now in relationship to mining, here in Michigan, we got an area called Coppersville, Michigan. They have hieroglyphs similar to these all up through those tombs showing that we were mining copper over 5,000 years ago from Michigan and shipping it all the way to Kemet. When you mix copper and tin, what do you get? Brass. The Egyptian swords were brass. They had the science of metallurgy down, and the copper was shipped as far as Michigan and Tennessee. We got a Coppersville, Tennessee, where the area is all red. And the mines are more than 5,000 to 6,000 years old. This is how long we've been interacting, trading. But your history begins with who in America?
Slavery.
And Columbus.
Christopher Columbus.
Columbus. And it's a fiction. It's a fiction because what was beginning? When you truly understand who and what Christopher Columbus is, Christopher Columbus was a mythology created to hide a secret society and their beginning of civilization. The name Christopher Columbus means the coming of Christianity by way of the dove, the goddess Libya. That statue you see in New York Harbor, that statue that you see in the law facilities. She's got the blindfold and she's holding the scale. The goddess Libra. When we was running it, we called her the goddess Ma'at. Christopher Columbus is nothing but the order of the Vatican, the Knights of Columbus, who now have taken control and domination. And they're rewriting the history of the world as they go. That's why the history that you're taught begins with Columbus and with Jesus. It's not a mistake. This is a Masonic process that's taking place. And you can't be mad at nobody but yourself because you're the one who taught them. Next slide. You created a system of Freemasonry to civilize them. That's all it was for. you understand what religion and what Freemasonry is, and it was not created